ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय जन्माद्यस्य यतोऽन्वयादितरतश्चार्थेषु अभिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्महृदाय आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं शुकमुखादमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः. So now we enter the third chapter of the seventh Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. Narada is narrating the story of Hiranyakashipu to Yudhishthira. We saw how after his brother Hiranyaksha was slayed by Varaha avatar, Hiranyakashipu was filled with rage and he made a vow to his demon friends that he will kill Vishnu and offer the blood as oblation to the spirit of his brother Hiranyaksha. That is how foolish he was, that he thought he can kill the supreme being Vishnu, who took the form of Varaha to slay his brother. And meanwhile, he went and preached very wise words to his family to get them over the grief of having lost Hiranyaksha, while inwardly he was raging with envy, fear, rage, anger, and all the other emotions. So with this, Narada continues that Hiranyakashipu decided now that he needs to make himself invincible in order to take on the supreme enemy he thinks he has got, which is Bhagavan himself. He decides to become invincible, free from old age and death, become the unrivaled monarch of the three worlds. And with this intention, he goes and does tremendous austerity in a mountain called Mount Mandana. What he does is he goes up to the mountain and then he stands in a yogic pose with both his arms lifted up, his gaze fixed on the sky, and his feet on tiptoes, just touching the ground with the tip of his toes. And he stands like this with this posture for a long time. Now we see even now there are yogis who are in desire of mystic power, siddhis, who stand with their hands up, arm up, or in different postures for a long time, and these are observed, and how after all this they get some mystic power which will only last as long as the body is alive, even if they get anything. So how people are ready to spend inordinate amount of energy for something temporary. Now Hiranyakashipu here, not only does he do this kind of austerity to become invincible, but he also represents a deeper principle which is seen in the world everywhere, which is people are ready to put in tremendous amount of hard work in order to pursue their goals, which are all very limited. People work for 18 hours a day and they hardly get any sleep, and they are working on some idea for a company or some project. And if we really look at the content of it, we find that it is ultimately only to make money. It is not rooted in any even social consciousness, let alone divine consciousness. It is simply rooted in greed and making money and becoming wealthy or becoming powerful. And same with politicians who lose sleep and work day and night to get power. So people in different professions, they put inordinate amount of effort, burn the midnight oil as it is said, and work day and night and engage in what is equal to a tremendous austerity in order to pursue essentially very limited material goals without recognizing the highest purpose of life. That is what Hiranyakashipu symbolizes here. He is engaged in this tapas as people of the world do. And again, in this world, there are those who are lazy, who don't do anything, who are called as couch potatoes, and who simply want to consume entertainment, and they are in the mode of tamas, and they are the majority, and technology and other effects are making more and more people into that, even young people into that. But there are a few who are in the mode of rajas, who are not lazy at all, who are extremely active, and yet their entire energy is devoted to gaining either power or money or wealth or fame. So these are the people the whole world also looks up to. They are put up on a pedestal as models, and that's what the education system also glorifies. And so vast majority of people are lazy, and then a few who are out of the laziness are chasing such temporary goals but ready to put tremendous amount of effort, and thus they are glorified as heroes. And that's the nature of Hiranyakashipu. So Hiranyakashipu represents that aspect of tremendous effort towards the wrong goals. So he does this, and it is said that his asceticism was so intense that smoke came out of his head, the crown of his head. And because of this, the whole of elements were affected. It is very beautifully described here that he was scorching all the worlds. The rivers swelled, the oceans swelled, earth and its divisions and mountains shook, stars and planets shot out, all the 10 directions were flaming forth. So, very poetically, it is described that the amount of intensity he was putting in his austerity was affecting the whole world. And this is again, in a small way, seen in the efforts of many who, for their personal glory and power, create so much exploitation of nature, exploitation of people around. And Hiranyakashipu is the extreme of that. Today's demoniac tendencies are nothing compared to what Hiranyakashipu is. He is the master demon, the king of all demons, and therefore he puts in so much asceticism that literally smoke comes out of the crown of his head, and all elements are affected. All the demigods who are presiding these elements are running hither and thither, it is said, and they all run to Brahma. Brahma is the original creator, as we know. When Bhagavan, the Supreme Being, brings forth the cosmic being, the Virat Rupa, with the Mahat Tattva, the cosmic intelligence, out of that, the first created being who comes forth is Brahma, which can be seen as the source of the material energy. And then that source of material energy, which is Brahma, brings forth all created beings, animate and inanimate beings, all of nature, and so on. So, those who are not inquiring all the way may think of Brahma as the source of the universe without recognizing that there is the intelligent conscious principle behind Brahma. Again, this is seen today as well. Many scientists, they accept laws of nature, they study the material energy, they want to master the material energy, and yet they do not accept that there is the intelligence which is behind the design of the material energy. Even if they see such tremendous pattern in material energy, very mathematical and very precise, they somehow think all of this happened by chance, and therefore they only want to worship the material energy and lord over it rather than acknowledge and understand the conscious principle which is the base of the material energy. And that's exactly what Hiranyakashipu symbolizes. He is doing this tremendous asceticism towards Brahma in order to lord over the material energy. And therefore, knowing this, all the demigods go to Brahma and say, "O Brahma, you control all the created world, the material energy that makes this whole world spin." And here is Hiranyakashipu who is doing this tremendous austerity, because of which he is affecting the entire material world. It is very difficult for all beings in this universe, because of his tremendous tapas, because of his tremendous austerity, and it seems to us that he wants to rival you. He essentially wants to change the world order. He wants to attain your position of being the master of the material energy, and thereby put his way, which is to exalt sin and deprecate virtue, and thereby lord over the whole universe. So, this is the greed of Hiranyakashipu, the tremendous demon who wants to lord over material energy and thereby put his writ over it. with his tremendous, intense austerity. So when Brahma comes to know of it, then he says, I shall go to him. And therefore, it is said that Brahma, along with his attendants, including Daksha, the sage Bhrigu, and so on, goes to the place where Hiranyakashipu has built a hermitage on Mount Mandana and where he is doing this austerity. And there it is said that first he did not find even Hiranyakashipu because Hiranyakashipu was covered with ant hills and grass and bamboos and so on. So he was engaged in this austerity for so long that he did not even care for his physical health. He did not care to eat. He was fasting, and there was grass grown around him, bamboos had fallen around him, ant hills had grown around him, his skin had fallen away, his fat had been eaten away, his blood had been consumed by ants. So basically, what it all shows is symbolically, again, the intense energy which people put in pursuit of some goal by which they affect their own health. They are ready to compromise their health, compromise their sleep, compromise their food, everything in pursuit of some mundane earthly goal. And it seems so all important that they are ready to torture themselves in order to attain that. And Hiranyakashipu was master at that because Hiranyakashipu, unlike the modern day hardworking, ignorant people who end up putting this kind of energy into very temporary goals, Hiranyakashipu knew that by yogic siddhis he can get it all back. So he was not losing his health on a long term basis, he knew, because he knew that if his austerities are successful and he gets yogic siddhis, he can not only recover his health but also he can become immensely strong physically. So he was, even though he was engaging in austerities and hard work, he was working at a different level from the gross level at which today's people are working, and therefore he was able to, it is said, invoke Brahma himself, the source of material energy, and he saw there, and Brahma addresses Hiranyakashipu. So Brahma says, first he smilingly says, "Oh, arise, arise, O son of Kashyapa." He says, "Uttishta, uttishta, bhadram te tapassiddhosi Kashyapa." Kashyapa is the name of Hiranyakashipu because he is the son of Kashyapa. Kashyapa is the great Muni, as we saw, great Rishi, who gave birth to both the demigods and the demons, the Adityas and the Daityas, and therefore he is the father of both. So Kashyapa is the name for him, another name. So it is said, you can ask me any boon because I have witnessed this marvelous tapas you have done and the great stamina you have demonstrated. You have been on this tapas for so many years that your whole body is gone away. Ants have eaten away, your blood has been sucked by insects, you have shown so much perseverance. So tell me what you need. And after saying this, Brahma takes water from his kamandalu. Kamandalu is the small water pot that Brahma carries and all the sages carry too. And from that water, the mystic water, he sprinkles on Hiranyakashipu. And it is said that Hiranyakashipu, because of the sprinkling of this water, emerges out of his ant hill like covering with a shining body. Now, mystically and mysteriously, he regains all his health, he regains his strength. Not only does he regain, he now becomes extremely strong. He is youthful, he is looking golden complexion, brilliant, radiating light, and he is so, his senses are keen, his frame is so strong, his limbs are so powerful. So he comes out like this in a very intense way out of this ant hill. He beholds Brahma standing in front of him and he offers his obeisances unto him and he addresses Brahma with a prayer. And before he does so, Brahma tells him that you are a mortal and therefore you have done all this great tapas to invoke me. Now tell me what you need and I can give you what you desire, O mortal. So Brahma hints to him by these words that you are a mortal and therefore no matter what you do, everything will be only within the realm of time. You cannot be immortal. Knowing that, ask me what you desire. So this is what Brahma tells Hiranyakashipu, and Hiranyakashipu now responds. Hiranyakashipu has invoked Brahma out of his enmity towards Vishnu. Now this is extremely illogical, as we can see, because Vishnu, the Supreme Being, is the source of Brahma. As we said earlier, the word Vishnu literally means one who pervades everything. Sarvam Vyapayati iti Vishnu. So he pervades the whole universe as pure consciousness, as Satchidananda. He has the independence to descend in the universe in his transcendental form, as he did with Varaha to kill his brother Hiranyaksha. And he has the independence to descend in any transcendent form. And he is also situated in the hearts of all beings as Atma, Paramatma. So, and Hiranyakashipu in a way knows all this because he has studied the Vedas. He is someone we already saw in the last chapter how he quoted Yama and how he quoted various episodes to assuage his family. Therefore, he is a well studied scholar. Again, he demonstrates the quality of those who are very scholarly in their mind, but their heart is still impure. And therefore, even though he knows at one level that Brahma is simply executing, or in other words, this material energy is operating only because of the substrate conscious principle, which is Bhagavan. And yet he thinks he can lord over the material energy and thereby completely deny the very basis of it. And this is again not very different from the attitude of many scientists today, as we said, who want to only lord over material energy while not acknowledging even that there is a higher principle that is behind this material energy. So, with this attitude, he glorifies the material energy, which is Brahma, and he tells Brahma, "Oh Brahma, you are the supreme ground of the whole universe. You bring forth the whole universe out of your energy. You are the first cause of all the beings, created beings, animate and inanimate. You bring forth the vital airs, you bring forth the five senses of perception, the five senses of action, the mind, the intellect." So, all that he says is true, but what he does not acknowledge or realize is that all that Brahma is able to do is because of the underlying conscious principle which he has been endowed with by Bhagavan. The very first verse of Bhagavatam, which we chant every day, where we say Tene Brahmaya Adi Kavaye, we say, so every day we say this verse that Brahma was first endowed by Bhagavan with wisdom with which he went forth engaging in creation. And therefore, to look at it another way, is the material energy that is the source of all universe is functioning because of the conscious principle behind it. And therefore, to glorify the material energy without recognizing the conscious principle behind is exactly what Hiranyakashipu is doing. And therefore, he says, "You bring forth all the animate and inanimate beings. You are the controller of the mind, the intellect, the senses, the five senses of sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell, the internal senses of mind, intellect, reason, and ego. You are the form of the three Vedas. You are the science of the rituals." He glorifies in all these ways and he lists all the various types of sacrifices. So there are multiple sacrifices. There are 7 types of sacrificial performances given in the Vedas, which are Agnishtoma, Atyagnishtoma, Ukta, Shodashi, Atiratra, Aptoryama, and Vajpeya. And these 7 sacrifices, he says, are all because of you, and you are the embodiment of the three Vedas. You are the soul of all embodied beings. You are omniscient, you are indivisible. In other words, he is glorifying Brahma, who is the source of creation, without recognizing, as we said already, that the very activity of Brahma is because of Bhagavan. And this is the core delusion in Hiranyakashipu, and therefore he is only going to be able to ask limited things. So he is saying all these glorification, and he says, "You bring forth time, you bring forth the various branches of knowledge in the Vedas. So again, all this shows that he's very well learned. He knows the Vedas, he knows all the 7 types of sacrifices, he knows the rituals. Then he says, you are all the Upavedas. Upavedas are things such as Dhanurveda, Ayurveda, which are about the science of archery, science of health, and so on. Then he says, you are the 6 angas. Their yogas have 6 angas. Angas are limbs, and that's why it is called Shadanga. The word Shadanga is used in many language, Shadang, because this comes from the fact that yogas have 6 angas, and these 6 angas are there in order to protect the yogas. It is said they are called as Siksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Chanda, and Jyotisha. So Siksha is the right pronunciation of Sanskrit, which is extremely important. So, how to pronounce Sanskrit is taught in Siksha. Kalpa is about the science of time. Vyakarana is grammar. Nirukta is vocabulary. Chanda is the prosody or the ways in which the Vedas are to be chanted. And Jyotisha is the science of astrology. So, all these are given in order to make sure that Vedas are protected properly. In fact, very specifically, it is said that there are 3 types of protection Vedas are given through these 6. They are called as Artha Raksha, Swarupa Raksha, and Anushtana Raksha. Artha Raksha means protecting the meaning of the Vedas. How is the meaning of the Vedas protected? Through vocabulary and grammar. So it is essential to understand the vocabulary and grammar in order to know the meaning of Vedas, which is called as Artha Raksha. And therefore that's Nirukta and Vyakarana. Nirukta is vocabulary, Vyakarana is grammar. Then Swarupa Raksha is the way the Vedas are to be pronounced. Not only one needs to know the meaning, but one needs to pronounce them correctly, because Sanskrit especially is a language which is so subtle that pronunciation matters a lot, and therefore the 2 branches meant for pronunciation are uh, sound and prosody, that is the meter. So Siksha, which is the way to pronounce, and Chandas, which is the various meters in which to sing the Vedic mantras. So these 2 are for Swarupa Raksha, or the form of Vedas. And then Anushtana Raksha means to, one not only needs to know the meaning and not only needs to know how to pronounce it, but one also needs to know when to do the right mantras and so on. And therefore, for that is the 2 other sciences called Kalpa and Jyotisha. Kalpa is about the science of time, and Jyotisha is astrology. And together they inform on what is the right time for what rituals and what mantras. So these 3 Rakshas, Artha Raksha, Swarupa Raksha, and Anushtana Raksha, are given by these 6 angas, as we see. And so these 6 angas are all, Hiranyakashipu says, coming from you. So it is true that Brahma brings forth the Vedas, and through the Vedas he brings forth the Upavedas, and then these Shadangas, the 6 limbs, as we saw, for the protection of Vedas. All this is true. So this again goes to show how very well learned Hiranyakashipu is. He is a greater scholar than most scholars of today, almost all perhaps. He knows everything there is to be known about the Vedas, about the rituals, about the grammar, about Sanskrit, about everything. And yet he is at a very basic level, at a very fundamental level, he is deluded to think that by mastering Vedas and by mastering the material energy that has brought forth the Vedas, he can lord over the universe. And this is the sign of the demoniac principle, which Hiranyakashipu is the ultimate representation of. So he says, "Oh, hail to the Almighty Brahma, you are endowed with all these faculties, and you confer on your devotees whatever they ask for. And therefore, I ask you this boon." So now he is going to ask a boon. He considers himself very smart again, because he has already been hinted that he cannot ask directly for immortality, because that is not possible. He is a mortal being. So he thinks he can circumvent that by asking a series of boons which will effectively grant him immortality. So he says to Brahma, "O Brahma, let there be no death for me at the hand of any being created by you." So this already he thinks will cover pretty much the whole space, because whether it's another human being or animal or even virus, bacteria, everything is created by the material energy. And therefore he says, let there be no death for me at the hand of any being created by you. Not only that, he thinks he is so smart, he says a series of conditions which are again to ensure that practically he will never face death. So he says, let there be no death for me, indoor or outdoor, day or night, by anyone else, and by through any weapon. Let there be no death on earth or in the air. Let there be no death from men or from animals. Let there be no death in any battle with any adversary, and let there be no death by any demigods, demons, serpents, or any other beings. Let there be, finally, he says, let there be the boon of having undisputed lordship over all embodied beings and glory like yourself in all the spheres and unfailing mystic powers. So we can see this is the series of boons he is asking. So, how smart Hiranyakashipu is. He is no ordinary villain. He is how Bhagavatam again has this beautiful way Shuka Brahma Rishi introduces, and Narada narrates, before coming to Prahalada, his son. We see the quality of the villain here. He is far superior than any villain that any modern story has ever conceived. He is of such power, such radiance, such a scholar, such well learned, such physical power as well, mental power, such power of determination, such austerity he did, and he is asking such a boon that he says again, no death by any being created by you, O Brahma, no death indoor or outdoor, no death day or night, no death from any weapon, no death on earth or in the air, no death from men or animals, no death from demigods, demons, or serpents, or any other being, and undisputed lordship over all embodied beings. So, this is the boon that the Hiranyakashipu is asking here of Brahma. And with this chapter ends. Now we will continue the next chapter where Brahma, what he does with this boon, and then what happens to Hiranyakashipu will continue. One important thing to notice here before we end this episode is Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that people who worship devatas, which is essentially worshipping material energy, they have always limited goals. They can only accomplish limited goals with that. And yet they do that. Whereas if they surrender unto me, they get the ultimate wisdom of pure peace, bliss, unconditional love, and eternal life. And yet people fall for this. So Krishna says in the Gita in the 7th chapter, Antavattu phalam tesham tad bhavati alpamedhasam. He says, alpamedhasam, those of limited intellect, they always ask for limited goals, and they go where? To devatas. Devan deva yajoyanti. And therefore they go to these devas, these lords of material energy, and they ask for these goals. Whereas the really intelligent ones, he says, Mad bhakta yanti mamapi. The one who surrenders to me, he attains me directly. So this is again the sign of true intelligence, is to inquire into the source of all creation, source of material energy itself, recognize him as the original source and surrender unto him. Otherwise, we get bewildered by material energy, and at best, one can try to lord over it like Hiranyakashipu is doing here, and that only results in a tremendous fall. So Hiranyakashipu embodies that by this verse of Gita, Alpa Medhasam, this limited intellect which thinks it's so great. This is what Hiranyakashipu is representing here, and he is with this limited intellect and yet a very scholarly, well learned intellect, and therefore again showing that knowledge and wisdom are two different things. With this, he is asking this very precise boon he thinks he can use to circumvent death itself and become invincible. With this chapter ends. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.